We have analyzed all the examples, so now we're ready to put the theory into practice and create our own ball bounce. So open your file, assignment_section04, and first let's go quickly over the rig. The big square control at the bottom is a global control which we don't animate, just use at the beginning to place the object somewhere in our scene and then leave it there. Then we have a smaller red square control which has only translation channels, so we use it for the ball's movements. And finally, we have a yellow circle which controls the ball's rotation. Now, let's make sure we have the right scene set up. In the panel at the top, we have the selectability options. Let's turn everything off except the NURBS curves, which is what our rig is made of. If you don't see these options, click on this arrow to open them up. In the viewport, if you don't see the textures of the ball, click on this icon of a checkerboard to turn on the textures. In the timeline options, make sure the auto key option is turned on and our timeline is set to 24 frames for now. In the end, open up the preferences and check whether you have the same parameters as I do. Frame rate is set to 24 frames per second. Playback speed is also set to 24 frames per second. And in the animation tab, you have your in tangents and out tangents set to auto ease. Or if you have an older version of Maya, then you won't have these 4 different types of auto options, so just select auto. We are ready to start animating. Select all the controls, go to the frame 1, and hit S to save the default position of our ball. That way, from now on, our auto key option will work. Now let's select our global offset control, which is responsible for the ball's translation, and go to the front view. Since our ball will be moving in one axis up and down, it is easier to work from the front camera mode. Now, let's bring our ball up. This will be our starting position, because in order for the ball to bounce, it needs to fall down from somewhere. Animation-wise, when we create a cycle, like in our case we have a cycle of a ball bounce, because this animation will be looping, it doesn't really matter if our starting position is in the air at the top or on the ground at the bottom. What matters is that our first and last poses are identical, so that the animation could loop properly. But in our case, it's better to start from the top, just because it will be easier for us to understand that the ball is falling down, then bounces back, and then repeats the motion. Okay, now let's go to the last frame and hit the S again so that we have saved the identical poses on frame 1 and 24. Then let's go to frame 12 and type in 0 in our translation Y channel so that our ball is placed back on the ground. If we play the animation now, we have a ball which is going up and down, but it doesn't look like a real bounce yet. So we need to go into the graph editor and fix the tangents. But before that, we can also use a ghosting option to see the spacing of our animation, which will help us understand how the ball should be moving. In order to ghost an object, we need to select the mesh, so turn back on the mesh selectability option and select the ball mesh. Then go to Visualize and select this Open Ghosting Editor option. Now make sure you choose this icon to set specific frames for ghosting, and then type in the numbers of your custom frames. I want to ghost only the first half of the animation, and I also want to have our ball's ghosting image of every 2 frames of that part of the animation. So I've typed in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and 12. I only want to ghost the first half of the animation because the second part of it is doing the exact same motion, just the opposite way. So that is why we only need the first half. When you've set up everything the way I have, click on Create Ghost from Selection and close the tab. Now we have a visualization of how the ball is moving in those 12 frames that we've selected. When the ball starts to move from the top, we can see that its next position is quite closely set to the previous one, so the spacing is pretty tight here. which means that the ball starts to fall down slowly. Later, the spacing gets wider and wider, so the ball speeds up. And then finally, before reaching its contact pose with the ground, it slows down again. You see how these two poses are very close to each other compared to the previous ones. When the ball bounces back, it does the same thing as before, coming into contact with the ground. Slowly goes up, then speeds up, and slows down again right before the final position. The ease out of the ball from its peak position is what we want, but the slowing down or the ease in at the bottom is not. Because of the gravity, the ball should accelerate when falling down, and here at this part it does, and then it should continue to accelerate. But in our animation it slows down, so we need to fix it. What we need to do now is select our offset control again and go to the graph editor. Since we're only animating the translation Y channel, we can open it up specifically. Here we see that our curve is easing into its position on the ground and then eases out from it. We want the ball to accelerate, so we need to change the curve at this key. Select the key and click on this icon to break the tangent. This option gives us two handles which can be manipulated separately from each other. So now we can select a handle on one side of our key and bring it up. You can see already in our viewport how the spacing of our ball is updating to the changes we're making at the graph editor. The higher up we bring this handle, the longer our ball stays at the top, and less time it takes for it to reach the ground. So the ball drop feels very quick, because we create a more sudden change of the height value in the graph editor. We can see in our viewport how now the spacing here is very wide, and here it is even tighter than before. We fixed the first part of the animation when the ball is hitting the ground. Now we want for the ball to jump off the ground with the same amount of energy. Select the other handle and bring it up as well. You can do that by holding down the middle mouse button and dragging it up. Be careful and try not to bring the handle too high. Like here, you can see that we overshoot our saved pose. The curve reaches an even higher value than the key, and we don't want that, because our keyframes dictate where our extreme positions are. In this specific frame, we want the ball to reach its highest position and not before, so we need to fix the curve and lower the handle. All right, now we can close the graph editor and check the animation. It's a bit difficult to see it clearly, so let's go to the Show menu and click None, then select Polygons. We hid the NURBS curves. Now we need to delete the ghosting of our object. Select the ball and go to Visualize, then choose Unghost Selected. Now we can look at our animation. You can see that we have quite a believable bouncing ball cycle. If we consider the timing, we know that our ball reaches its contact pose on the ground in 12 frames, and then in another 12 frames, it goes back to its initial pose. So in 24 frames, our ball does a one bounce, and that is our timing. Depending on how many frames you use for the ball bounce, how high up the ball jumps, and how slowly it reaches its highest point, the animation can feel very different and can create the illusion of a very heavy or light ball. So play with it and try to create other variations of the bouncing ball. The more practice, the more comfortable you will feel using different timing and spacing to convey your idea.